might be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, I am very sorry that we kind of took a little bit of time to get the video out today. We had a bunch of people over on Patreon asking us if we were even going to upload a video because usually it's out way before this. But I have to apologize. It is a very special day. Not only are we continuing to grow at a rate that I did not expect at all. I mean, we are about to become the #1 Dynasty fantasy football channel on YouTube. But more importantly, today was the drop of our in-depth rookie draft guide for 2021, which is titled Metrics with Context. Now, this was over 100 pages, and I have no idea how, but we dropped it this morning, made sure that everybody over there on Patreon that wanted the draft guide got those links out to them. And surprisingly, we have already had a few people reaching out saying they finished it. Now, it's kind of embarrassing. I don't know if I'm just a slow reader and y'all were able to finish it in about 5 hours, but the feedback that we have got is very encouraging. I will admit that I was nervous on what y'all were going to think. I will admit that this was my first time ever writing a draft guide. So of course I try to do the best I can, focusing in on the quality and the research going into it. And I try to clearly represent that for everybody to understand in an easy format. But I just thought that not as many people were going to like it because it was more of a novel format and it was more of like a research paper rather than a draft guide with a bunch of graphics for every player with a bunch of just fancy little things that catch the eye. But nonetheless, very happy to hear those positive reviews. And yeah, let's dive into the video today and let's talk about some 1-year rentals for Dynasty Fantasy Football. Now, let's just bring up our first player in Chase Edmonds, and Chase Edmonds is going to be the perfect guy for me to go through and try to discuss exactly what I'm talking about here. So you're going to find that this is not just a list with a bunch of players that are 32, 33 years old, like an AJ Green, like a T.Y. Hilton, and me obviously stating that they only have 1 year left for ever being considered to be in your starting lineup. I mean, that is way too easy. That is not fun to talk about at all. What I would rather do is I would rather focus in on some players that are going high in redraft leagues and they're going to be discounted in Dynasty because people understand that their job security isn't there for the long haul and they're not necessarily pieces that you can acquire right now and plan to build around into 2022 and 2023. So yeah, Chase Edmonds is the perfect example of this. And now with Edmonds, I sent out a tweet earlier today going, I really don't understand his redraft ADP. I mean, it's all the way down at 64 overall. Now, yes, this is a Dynasty channel, but why I really want to focus in on this redraft ADP is it's going to provide us so much context on what we should be expecting from these players in 2021. Of course, this ADP is only a starting point. You can't just naturally assume that it is 100% accurate. You have to use it as a starting point, then try to evaluate if you think it's fair, to try to evaluate if you think other people are missing something. And here with Edmonds, I will say that his value in redraft right now is massive if you're going to be getting him in the 6th round. But specifically for Dynasty, why I'm viewing him as a 1-year rental, even though he's only 25 years old, is if you look at the team investment into Chase Edmonds, and this is something we talk about all the time, and I am tired of talking about it right now. This is why we didn't like James Robinson coming into the NFL draft, because we go, you know what? He simply doesn't have the team investment to guarantee himself the starting job down the line. And Chase Edmonds, the same thing here. Now, I will say, I like to see what the Cardinals did for Edmonds in 2021, really setting him up to be the starting running back. And I know a lot of people are going to be looking at a James Conner going, Mason, James Conner is not going to be the pure handcuff. James Conner is going to be getting usage at the short goal line, as well as just an overall 3-1, 2-1 scenario. But I will say with Chase Edmonds, this is a player that, I mean, you had to be worried coming into the offseason that the Cardinals were going to be taking a Javonte Williams. The Cardinals were going to be taking a Travis Etienne. Yet they don't draft a running back at all in this year's NFL draft. They pay James Conner only $1.75 million. Now, I know a lot of people are going to think that's significant just because we know James Conner's name. We understand that he was that impact player in Pittsburgh whenever he did have the starting job. But I think fantasy owners are overrating James Conner slightly based on what he did way back in, I believe, in 2018. Now, what I would rather focus in on is I would rather focus on what James Conner went for in the market. So he went for 1.75 million. Now, the next player we're going to be talking about is Myles Gaskin, and this is going to be the difference between their perceived value and their actual value, in my opinion. Now, in the case of Chase Edmonds, he's currently being discounted because they bring in another running back in James Conner for 1.75 million, but I'm looking at it going, that's what a backup running back costs. That's the investment into a backup at the position. While yes, I will admit that you have to be slightly worried about James Conner getting the goal line usage, which is right away whenever we had that signing, I came out, made a short little podcast for everybody over there on Patreon saying James Conner coming in, you're not going to drastically move Chase Edmonds down, but you do have to understand how this does impact his ceiling if he's no longer going to be getting that goal line usage. Whereas on the other hand, with a player like Myles Gaskin, you actually have Malcolm Brown coming in for that same contract with 1.75 million. But because you've never started Malcolm Brown in Dynasty, because Malcolm Brown has never been a league winner, people really aren't viewing this as the same thing. They're viewing it as Malcolm Brown is a clear backup to Myles Gaskin, where if you really zoom out, you really look at what Malcolm Brown has done over the past few years in LA. You go, hey, this is a running back that split the backfield with Cam Akers. This is a running back that was getting touches over Darrell Henderson. Who is to say that he's not going to be splitting the backfield with Myles Gaskin? So that's why I'm looking at Chase Edmonds as a rental that I think too many people are reading into the situation of James Conner coming in. I think that you're looking at him as a starting running back that's going to be a running back 2 in fantasy in 2021. Now, beyond that, I am not trusting of him. Beyond that, I would never even think that Chase Edmonds would be a starting player in our lineup. But for 2021, you're going to get that discounted production, regardless of if you're playing in a dynasty league, regardless of if you're playing in a redraft league. And at the end of the video, I'm going to go through some overall strategy on what I think you should be doing with all these players I talk about. If you need some production at a certain position, if you need some depth, how to acquire them for the right price. And maybe you're a rebuilding team and you're going, hey, if this is only a 1-year rental player, I am not too interested. Let's trade them away. But we can discuss that trade strategy at the end. Now, let's go over to Myles Gaskin real quick. We already mentioned him, but the difference here with Gaskin is I think too many people view him as a locked-in 3-down running back in Miami that's not going to come off the field. You look at his redraft ADP, it's a full round ahead of Chase Edmonds. He's going at the end of the 4th, the beginning of 5th in most drafts. He's only 24 years old, but here with Myles Gaskin, very similar to Chase Edmonds. In Dynasty, if you're rostering him, I am completely fine with you assuming that he is going to be the starting running back in Miami. You're going to be able to plug and play him as a running back 2 in your starting lineup. But you have to understand that this is a player that was drafted on day 3. I know he does have another year under contract for 2022, but if you look at the amount of assets that Miami has stacked up and you combine this with the fact that they really have not many bad contracts on that overall roster, I think that 2022 is going to be the year where the Miami Dolphins go, you know what? We really have no holes here. I think we can go get that luxury piece at the running back position. So for that reason, I am viewing Myles Gaskin as someone who is only valuable in 2021. I'm viewing him as a guy that I go, yes, he's talented, but he's a day 3 player that really has no team investment whatsoever. So Myles Gaskin would have to have an outlier type season to guarantee that starting job in 2022, which I'm not expecting to happen. I expect that owners will be able to play Myles Gaskin this season. Beyond that, you're not going to have anything. So of course, this is a piece that if you need some depth at the running back spot and you're a contending team, yeah, you're fine holding on to Myles Gaskin. But if you're a rebuilding roster, then I think you want to sell. And obviously we'll get into more strategy at the end. I just want to make sure that we are briefly discussing these players and briefly touching on why I think that they are only 2021 assets. Now, our next player should be very obvious to everyone. Let's go over to Raheem Mostert. Now, with Mostert, he's older, 29 years old. He's actually going later in redraft leagues, which is surprising how late he is going. He is going with the 78th pick on average. Now, here with Raheem Mostert, there are a couple things we know. A, you see this team have really no guaranteed money into Raheem Mostert, even in 2021. I came on record and I said, if you look at the guaranteed money that they have into Jeff Wilson, you look at them bringing in Wayne Gallman, also trading up for Trey Sermon and getting Elijah Mitchell on day 3. I thought Raheem Mostert was a potential cut candidate before the season happened. But no, you don't have to be worried about that anymore with Jeff Wilson getting injured. But what you do have to worry about is you have to worry about the fact that they go ahead and they trade up for Trey Sermon. Now, to go along with this, beyond this year, I mean, I would be very surprised if Raheem Mostert was still on this 49ers roster. I'm viewing him as someone that is most likely just going to be cut entirely next offseason. Now, yes, I will fully admit that Raheem Mostert was someone that we identified going into the NFL draft as someone that you potentially wanted to be targeting, given the fact that we didn't think San Francisco was going to be willing to spend those assets to move up for a luxury position at running back. I mean, if you looked at the overall roster, you looked at the commitment that they moved up to get into that number 3 pick. I really didn't think that this was a team in a situation where they could afford to spend that luxury pick on a running back, but we were wrong. They went out, they get Trey Sermon, and you cannot overlook that for the rest of the running back room. And given the fact that Raheem Mostert's going so far down in redraft leagues right now, I think that he is going to be the one player on this list that I honestly don't even want as a one-year rental, because we are seeing in these high-stakes redraft leagues that these players that are focusing in on 2021 projections, they're not all in on Raheem Mostert. So if you're a contending team, you really don't even know if you're going to be able to play him yourself. So Mostert is a rental that honestly doesn't matter if you're a contender, doesn't matter if you're a rebuilder. At this point, I would be looking to sell. Now, I think that there is a clear strategy you can pull off by selling these rentals and trying to upgrade in your starting lineup. But of course, we'll get that to the end. Now, Mike Davis is going to be our last running back we are bringing up. And Mike Davis is my number 1 rental target. Now, if you go through and you look at his redraft ADP, he is right up there with a Myles Gaskin. He's actually number 1 out of all the running backs on this list in terms of where 2021 drafters are taking him. He is going at the end of the 4th round in those redraft leagues. And he is honestly one of the easiest running backs, at least in my experience, on this list to go out there and trade for in Dynasty. And if we understand that, hey, yeah, Mike Davis is only a 2021-year-old player. I'm sorry, only a 2021-year play just because he's 29 years old, just because you don't have the long-term investment by the Atlanta Falcons. But this is why you identify these rentals. This is why you have a realistic expectation on what you're going to be looking for with the Myles Gaskin, with the Chase Edmonds, because a lot of people in Dynasty, especially if they just now started playing and they don't understand the turmoil that you have at the running back position year to year with the guys that aren't locked into those deals. I mean, they're going to be viewing Chase Edmonds and a Myles Gaskin because they are 4 or 5 years younger than Mike Davis. They're going to be viewing them as much better options down the road, where I don't care about that at all with any of these running backs. All of these running backs, I just care about 2021 production. So if Mike Davis is currently going the highest out of all these guys in redraft leagues and everybody's on the same page with him only being a 1-year option, I think that's the guy you go and get because he's going to come at a cheaper price and you're just targeting that production this year anyway. Now, so if you're going to be asking yourself, should I be trading for these running backs in Dynasty? I think you have to essentially go, am I a contender? Am I a rebuilder? Am I trying to win this year or next? And essentially, not only are rebuilders going to be looking to sell them off entirely, because obviously if you're a rebuilding team, what you're going to be trying to do is you're going to be trying to move Chase Edmonds, Myles Gaskin, Raheem Mostert, Mike Davis, really any of these guys, you're going to be trying to move them for future picks. Now, I will say the best time of the year to do that is not going to be now. The best time of the year to do that is either going to be week 1 or week 2, when essentially everybody in your league thinks that they are a contending team. So please don't run out to your league chat right now and go, hey, Chase Edmonds on the block, Chase Edmonds on the block, Chase Edmonds on the block. Because if you can just have the patience to wait a couple months for where people are actually submitting their starting lineups and going, you know what, I could use an upgrade at running back too. Let's go send out 2 future 2nd round picks for Chase Edmonds. That is where you capitalize. And if you're a contending team, how I want to be viewing these players is in 2 buckets. You have your guys that you can target for depth if you're a contending team that needs a plug and play at running back too. And then on your very strong contending teams, I mean, you know who you are if you are a team that is just a heavy favorite in your league to the point where you really have no expectations of losing a single game. I mean, everybody sees these teams in Dynasty where they just made 3 or 4 monster trades through the years where they have Mahomes at quarterback, they have Barkley and McCaffrey at running back, they have some solid wide receivers, and they have George Kittle at tight end. I mean, if you're in that bucket, these are also players that I don't need on your team, because if you are that polarized into being such a strong roster, what I would rather do is I would rather try to use these guys to get a long-term long-term upgrade. So in that scenario, I would love to take a player like a Chase Edmonds or a Myles Gaskin. I would like to try to trade a future first-round pick along with them to get a running back that you think has a higher ceiling for 2021, as well as having that long-term value baked in. Someone like an Antonio Gibson would be perfect. I mean, if you're a very strong team where you don't need to worry about the depth, I mean, if you can take your Chase Edmonds, use a future first, and get that upgrade into Antonio Gibson, J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, obviously, most owners are just going to be giving you the bird, telling you, hey man, F off, you're the strongest team in the league. I'm not going to be even thinking about making a move like this. I mean, at that point, you don't do it, obviously. But occasionally, you're going to find an owner going, hey, Chase Edmonds, Myles Gaskin, whoever they like, they're going to go, maybe they score about the same amount of points as an Antonio Gibson this upcoming season, and I'm getting a future first. And those are the type of deals you are trying to target if you are that extremely strong team. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. Of course, if y'all did, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton, and I will see y'all with the video tomorrow. I really owe a massive thank you for all the Patreon supporters in Ben, Braden, Zach, Ryan, William, Derek, Justin, Marshall, Tyler, and Eamon. Thank you so much, guys.